There are plenty of myths and rumors regarding Pokémon GO's gameplay that has spread within the Pokémon GO community over the past several years, and I do not subscribe to any of these myths. A lot of them have been proven to be completely false, and I do think that when you're playing Pokémon GO, you need to keep in mind that there are just certain things that will not happen. The purposes of this video is to go over a couple of common myths and rumors, and also talk about why I do not believe any of them are true. Alright, so with that said, let's get right into it. How's it going, everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's Pokemon GO video. Alright, so I do not know if this video is going to be considered controversial, but there's a bunch of myths and rumors within Pokemon GO that have spread within the community over the past several years that I do feel needs to be addressed. Yeah, there are a lot of things that actually do not happen in Pokemon GO, no matter how much you try. But a lot of players believe that if you keep doing these certain methods, you're going to get the results that they are supposedly going to give you. Now, a lot of players will say that it shouldn't matter if you subscribe to any of these myths and rumors, because as long as you're not harming other players and making the gameplay feel less rewarding for other players, it really doesn't matter if you believe any of these myths. And there's certainly going to be players, especially in the comments for this video, that are going to claim that some of these myths have come true for them. I really do not believe that any of these myths are true, and I'll try to explain it as I go over each of them. Alright, so the first myth that I'm going to be covering is, of course, the long-standing rumor that you are going to have a much higher chance at getting a shiny if you return to the game after a long break. There is absolutely no evidence for this within the game's code. A lot of players out there will claim that they got a shiny immediately after they came back to the game after a long break, but I honestly think this is just sheer luck. Every Pokemon is going to have a specific shiny chance, and there's going to be some Pokemon that's going to have a higher shiny chance than others. It doesn't necessarily matter how long you've been away from the game, everyone has the exact same shiny rate. So if you've taken a long break from Pokemon GO and then you come back and immediately got a shiny, it's more that you're just very lucky compared to a player that has been playing every day. Again, I'm pretty sure there's going to be players out there who claim that as soon as they return to the game after a long break, they got a shiny. And yeah, that will tend to happen, mainly because of how these things work. It doesn't mean they gave you an increased shiny chance as a welcome gift for coming back to Pokemon GO. This is not something that makes any kind of sense when it comes to the gameplay mechanics of Pokemon GO, because ultimately what you will find is that a lot of players will take long breaks and then come back to the game when there is a particular shiny that they want as part of an event rotation. It's something that Niantic would be aware of, which is why they wouldn't include a mechanic like this. Now here is a very common misconception that I do want to dispel right now. When a Pokemon has a weakness to another type, it doesn't mean they're taking double damage of that type. For example, with grass type Pokemon, they're weak against flying types and ice types. They're not taking double damage from flying type attacks or ice type attacks. What they are taking is an increased amount of damage, which is equivalent to about 1.6 times the amount of damage. So yeah, that's something you need to keep in mind when you're setting up your teams for the GO Battle League or with raid battles. The only exception is, of course, if there is a double weakness, but they're not receiving 4 times the amount of damage, they're receiving closer to around 2.5 times the amount of damage. I don't exactly know what kind of formulas they're using when it comes to these damage multipliers, but just know that it is not double damage. Now, the third myth and misconception regarding Pokemon GO is that spoofers do not get banned because Niantic wants to collect all of the revenue that spoofers generate. This is unequivocally false. When it comes to spoofing in Pokemon GO, Niantic is fully against it, and that is the consensus that I've gotten from anyone that I've ever talked from Niantic. Without a doubt, if you are spoofing and you get caught, you will be banned. No matter how much money you're spending in the game, Niantic does not want you to spoof. Of course, there's going to be a lot of players out there who do spoof who have never been banned, and maybe it's because of how they are spoofing, but when it comes to Niantic, they are constantly trying to go after cheaters. That has been proven true over the years with so many ban waves hitting spoofers, and I do not believe for a second that they want to keep spoofers around. So if you are a spoofer and you're constantly spending money in the game, it's not going to make you ban proof. That's something you do need to keep in mind. Personally, I don't spoof and I do not encourage spoofing, but if you are someone who decides to spoof, I'm not going to be against you for doing that. It's not something I ever suggest because Niantic has banned a lot of spoofers in the past. Plus, I feel like playing the game legitimately is just such a better experience than just joysticking your way to another location. Now, the next myth and rumor is something that I personally believed for the longest time, and that is the use of a Pokemon Go Plus or a Pokemon Go Plus Plus is going to give you an increased shiny rate. Yeah, there's a lot of players who have said that when they have their Pokemon Go Plus Plus active, they end up with a whole bunch of shinies as they collect Pokemon throughout the day. This is not necessarily related to the use of these devices. It's just simply the fact that you're catching a lot more Pokemon, which means you're inevitably going to end up with more shinies. So yeah, I don't know where this myth or rumor started, but there's no evidence that this sort of mechanic exists in the game code. Now, the next myth is a bit of a classic, and I do think that there's still players out there who believe this is true, and that is the myth that if you hold down the Pokeball when a Pokemon is being caught, you will be able to get a much higher catch rate. Considering that a lot of players that I run into at raids are still holding down the Pokeball on the screen, it means this rumor is still alive and well. There is no evidence that this myth is true. I do not believe that if you are holding down the Pokeball as it's shaking, there is a higher chance that the Pokemon is going to stay in the ball. Everything is based on a base catch rate. There's nothing that's going to increase that catch rate outside of mechanics like curveball throws and excellent or great throws. And of course, berries and type metals and different things like that. There are a couple of things that will increase your catch rate, but holding down the Pokeball is not one of them. Alright, and finally, the last myth that I wanted to cover in this video is one that I commonly hear about, and that is the myth that if you are on a win streak in PvP, Niantic is purposefully going to give you opponents who have perfect counters to your team. This is commonly referred to as the algorithm, and it was made famous by one other YouTuber. And I do not believe this is true at all. I just simply do not think there's any evidence that something like this exists. When it comes to the Go Battle League, there is a meta, and a lot of Pokemon are going to be commonly used. But very often, you're going to run into players who have very different teams. So if you're using very specific Pokemon, chances are you will run into opponents who will just have the perfect counter for your team. That's just going to be inevitable because there's so many different teams that you could come across. It's not the game trying to screw you in order to keep you at a 50% win rate. What it really is doing is checking your matchmaking rating and then pairing you up against opponents who have a similar win rate. That's how you actually stay at a 50% win rate. It has nothing to do with your team. You can talk to any high-level PvP player and they will tell you nothing like this actually exists. What they will tell you is that the gameplay is all about skill and technique, as well as making sure you're bringing a variety of different teams. Make sure you're investing in a variety of different Pokemon, and make sure you do not take every loss personally. I think that's the main reason why something like this rumor exists, in that some players just do not believe they deserve to lose, and they blame it on something other than their own mistakes. So yeah, these are all the myths that I've commonly heard about throughout my years playing Pokemon Go, and I have to tell you, there is no case where I believe any of them are true. But of course, I totally recognize that there's going to be players who disagree with me on this, and that's totally okay. If you believe in any of these rumors and myths, that's totally fine. It's not going to harm other players. Unless, of course, you're a spoofer and you take over gyms maliciously in a town, well, eventually you're probably going to get banned anyway, so it probably doesn't even matter that you believe that third myth. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Now, I would love to know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about. Is there a particular myth that you subscribe to that I did not mention in this video, or do you believe that any of these myths are actually true and you have evidence for it? Definitely share all of that down below, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all the members of my Patreon family. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in a big way, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all the members of my Patreon family, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel non-monetarily, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @CountJinsula, and I'm on the following platforms. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.